I'm Ryan Betson.
I'm Max Cooper.
And this is our review of Doom Eternal. So big thank you to Bethesda Australia for providing us the code to check out Doom Eternal. So this is the latest release from id Software. And as you would expect, it's more shooting, demons, jumping around, fast action gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty exciting. Well, that's Max. Before we dive into the nitty and the gritty, what's your quick first thoughts on this?
It's a solid game. Gameplay's tight. It's got your action aplenty. It's got some tight platforming. It's just if you loved Doom 2016, it is just more of that goodness that was in that game.
Yeah, so my thoughts pretty much the same. I thought it was, in terms of gameplay, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. It's more of that quick, fast-paced action. Great variety of enemies, great variety of guns. I'm just going to put it out there. The gameplay is tight as hell, pun intended.
It's good too because you've got such a large arsenal of weaponry. You're not forced to use it all, but it greatly benefits you to switch on the fly because obviously each of the enemy types have their own weaknesses, and it makes your life easier to not have that go-to favorite gun, which I liked. So
let's go through it as if you would, as if reviews of old, right? Gameplay, whatever. So let's have a chat about the gameplay specifically. So as we mentioned, it is the same sort of quick, fast-paced action shooting that you've seen in Doom before, especially with Doom 2016. However, they have changed ever so slightly with more verticality as well as more platforming. So this is the big thing. So when I played this at PAX last year, first thing I noticed was that platforming. Sort of, there's like dashes and there's double jumps, which I think both were in the previous one. However, now you're diving onto ledges and swinging off ropes and sort of almost parkouring your way across the thing, but not to that extreme. We were discussing this prior, so I recently completed Doom 2016, probably about a month or so ago, sort of as build up to this. You played about 2 levels of it, even though it was a challenge for both of us, and you went sure, and then didn't do it. How do you find these new improvements?
So diving into this, obviously, like you just said, I've come in quite fresh. The game's fantastic. Personally, for me, it's not normally a game that I would gravitate towards. I'm very much the big story RPG guy. I very rarely play kind of linear style first person shooters. But this is great. It's got enough action. It's got enough exploration in the levels. Like, despite being a linear game, there is enough secrets to explore in the levels. The platforming is tight. The gunplay is tight, and because it keeps throwing stuff at you and amping itself up constantly, it really keeps you on your toes. So there's never that lull moment of I want something to be happening, because you're always going at 110%, because if you're not, you're gonna die.
Yeah, and I do think the additional platforming really helped add to that, that amplified that action, right?
Yeah.
So it seems with some minor demon changes, we won't get into specifics because people may not want to hear the new creatures, but they do force you to move around.
Yeah. So, because obviously the whole thing of this is, if you want to heal, you need to kill everything. So you've got that risk reward of, I'm low on health, but to get health, I've got to push forward and get into it. So having those platforms, having those the swinging poles, having the mid-air dash, the double jump, you've got that mobility to get to where you need to go without taking, too many hits. Yeah,
so because, there's a situation you might be sort of, pushed into a corner because, as I mentioned, there's the demons that are kind of they're designed, they're almost like AoE, right? They're kind of like pushing you to a certain location, and there is one like the Pinky as an example, which is in the first one. That's the bull dude that just kind of rushes at you, and you've got to jump and get out of him, same as everyone. But the problem is you jump and you move, and then there's more people around you.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than them pushing you into a corridor and then just having a big boy just standing in the way, and you just can't get out.
Yeah,
you're like, well, I guess I'm just dead in here now.
So when you get to those little open areas where you can oh crap, all right, jump, and then you double dash, grab onto a pipe, and just fling yourself forward, get over there, pick up some ammo, and move on back in. Because as you mentioned, with that, Doom has the best thing about Doom is, so adding to my point, is you feel like a badass the whole time. Like every moment you're like, I need to get into the fight.
Yeah.
So you just start moving in and just start hammering. You're punching, you're kicking. So now you've got this little stabby thing on your arm. There's like shanking dudes in the face, blasting them, jumping, getting mid-air attacks. So it really amplified the you feel like that you're always on the move, which I think is brilliant. Because the difficulty with that is, I remember when I played Wolfenstein 2, it had the same feel as Doom and like zipping around. But the second you got out of cover, you are fucked. Yeah. You just get instantly ruined. Where here it's like, no, we want you to get in, we want you to get involved and take on as many of these creatures as you can. Yeah,
because you definitely get rewarded by the health drops, the shield drops that every enemy will supply you with.
So speaking of health drops, they do have the glory kills that from the original have come back. However, they are more gruesome, they are awesome, there's great variety to them, and you know, with the new little stabby tool, there's a bunch of different ones to see. Glory kills are awesome.
Yeah, the glory kills are great. I noticed, obviously, depending on where you activate your glory kill will depend on what you actually do.
Where you're standing around that demon.
Or if you're in midair versus on the ground, and yeah, it's so good.
Cool. So there's a lot of times I'm not even trying to get help. I am just, hey, and just like stabbing them. Because then there's an additional skill that you can get. So when you do glory kill, you get a bit of a small power up. So where you can sort of like deliver a bigger punch that can sort of create a nice AoE attack, which is great. Trying to think what else in terms of of that side. Speaking of glory kills and looking cool, one thing they have added here is damage indicators. So previously in Doom 2016, if you shot someone, they just kind of took the hits until they started glowing. We're here, body parts are falling off, limbs are coming off, like there are just big chunks of face and leg and chest just thrown off with a blow. I think it added so much.
Yeah, it's nice having an indicator to know, you know, I'm getting pretty close to downing this guy.
Yeah.
I can risk the dash in and try and get the finishing blow before I get, you know, melted.
Well, yeah, especially so it does kind of it entirely telegraphs their health, which is handy because if you're getting in there, and because I feel the demons are a bit more powerful in this one compared to say Doom 2016, and I think that was the design to fit with the new gameplay changes. So you know, you're seeing that you're tripping them down. You're like, oh, you are looking worse for wear, but I'm looking worse. So I'm gonna duck, go over there, grab it, and then as they come back, like take them out. In terms of gameplay, though, as you mentioned, it is a linear shooter. So there is a lot more focus on step. What is it about that didn't intrigue you?
So I like I said before, I like my exploration. Now, don't get me wrong, this game has plenty of it. There are so many secrets to go and find. The map is fantastic. The mini map that you get, it allows you to be able to see what you've missed, and it doesn't show you exactly where you need to go. So you'll find, for example, there'll be a drop behind some bars, and you're like, I need that. How do I get that? You pull open your map, and you're like, I can see that it's there. I just need to find the entrance point. And then I'll spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes trying to find that one spot where I've missed, like the crack in the wall, the hole in the... And there's been so many times where I've jumped off the side of the map and then dashed back on just to see if there's anything just hanging off the side.
I'm seeing that it's underneath me.
Yeah. So, you know, it's not... I love my open worlds. Like, I like being able to go anywhere. But I think this style of game is helped by having such a linear progression. It does push you forwards, which is what you always want, which is what you're always wanting to do in Doom Eternal anyway. But you know, there's times where you've got to backtrack, go to separate parts that were once locked and now aren't, and there's still exploration for those willing to look for it and wanting to collect all the things that there are to collect. Yeah, like in terms of being as a linear shooter, similar to what you're saying, I like that that pull, just keeping you moving forward. However, compared to Doom 2016,
I did notice that it was a bit more obvious on where it wanted you to go. So there was a lot of green lighting, sort of
I noticed
pushing you over here, over there. So at no point did I ever feel lost in probably a bad way. And that's I know it's a difficult thing. It's a weird thing to say, but when I was playing 2016 recently, like that Foundry level, I found myself getting lost not in a bad way, but as in like, I need to remember this level. I need to remember what goes where, and because as I'm trying to unlock these swarm nests and stuff like that, I'm just trying to remember how to get to where. Where here, it's like it's there.
Yeah,
and it kind of took away some of that exploration, as you mentioned. It kind of lineared it too much.
I can see that,
which I found was a very minor problem. But the game is quite lengthy, so there were moments where I was getting lost. I can understand how that would lead to like additional frustrations, and that may be a bit annoying for anybody else. So, this is a really weird way to say, because I found at moments it was too gamey.
Yeah. So, just to iterate on what you said before, there's definitely, hey, there's green lights over here. This is definitely the way you want to be going. And you'll notice that a lot of the dead end paths will have red lights. So you're like, oh, well, obviously I don't need to go that way. Very rarely was there something down there. It's just a dead end or a locked door that will open at a later date. And then you'll find that once you come back, it's now green. Yeah. And you're ready to go.
Which I think is the problem with the gaminess, right? Because it's being a video game, it's very difficult to be like, it's too much like a game. Because it's Doom. You're an overpowered monster killing machine. Like, none of it is realistic. You're fighting literal demons, right? However, having it took away some of its grounding. Yeah. I think. As in, there wasn't that organic exploration when you sort of, even some of the verticality stuff, it felt a little bit too on that sort of game. It's very difficult for me to explain, because even though as I say it, I know it sounds stupid.
No, I understand where you're coming from. It's hard to, because obviously they've got to keep pushing you forwards, and getting hindered by not knowing the correct path stops that. Like, there were still times where I'm like, hey, I'm not sure where I need to go, and I'll spend 10 minutes searching a single room for a climbing point.
I think the reason they have done this, maybe have done it like amped up a little too much, is because the levels here are larger. Yeah. They are noticeably larger than they were in 2016, and that comes down from a visual point. So like, not the playable area, but it's the whole visual look of the game. So moments where you come to a new location, and then you look up and you see this massive vista, and it's just like fucking hell. And it looks beautiful. And there's one with like an old statue. This was in a trailer, I'm pretty sure. Like an old statue stabbing a giant demon, like a titan. What are they called? Like a titan. Yeah. And it's just like, this is awesome. And then like, there are a lot of like corridor working, and then there's like a corridor to an open area where like, I'm gonna have to fight people in here, move to some corridors and go on. But there are moments where it's just big, it's massive, and it's just you traversing a giant area. So I understand that within a giant area like that, they do need to hint you where to go, otherwise you'll end up not where you're supposed to be. Yeah. So I know, I totally, I do get that.
You just found it to be a little bit too hand-holdy.
It's a little bit too, a little bit too hand-holdy for me personally. Yeah. But like, saying that though, it didn't really take away from the experience, because I still enjoyed running around and shooting stuff. And it's like, oh cool, I'll go this way to shoot some more things. Yeah. So that part of it was pretty cool. One other new addition to the game is the fortress. So as previously alluded to in in previews and sort of I think maybe announced at E3 as well, the Doomslayer has his own hub base.
So obviously, yeah, when you first mentioned it to me, because you started playing this game a little bit before I did, you mentioned that it was essentially a hub world. I was like, ooh, hub worlds, really? Another hub world? Like, is that where we're going with this?
Like, when it comes for me now, it is a bad word. It's almost like a curse word. Like, remember when I play, like, using an example most recently of like Tom Clancy's Breakpoint, Ghost Recon. You play that hub, and you second you're in that hub world, and you see like 100 people. Like, this instantly ruins the whole narrative of this game.
But the hub world. The ship is
the Fortress of Doom.
The Fortress of Doom which I kept in my mind saying incorrectly. I'm like, hang on, isn't that Superman's thing? And then I'm like, no,
it's the Hall of Justice or the
Fortress of Solitude.
Fortress of Solitude.
Anyway, the Fortress of Doom is great.
Yeah.
I love it. It's a cool area to explore. It's got your training room. It allows you to fight the demons without spending this precious commodity of your ammo.
So practice your tactics.
So you can practice your tactics. There's some really cool stuff lore-wise. Won't go into that. But primarily, you go there after the end of your level. You get a little bit more a little bit more story beats, and then you go straight back into it.
Yeah, so at its core, it's an interactive menu.
Yeah.
It's like it's pretty much, all right, you've done this location, here's your next mission, here's your next location, and you get transported to the next location. So other than that, it isn't this big online hub where you're going to see other Doomslayers or anything. You're not going to have
changing your
small mini games or none of that bullshit, right? Like there's some unlockables and stuff in there from collectibles you get throughout the game. But at its core is literally an excuse for you to go from this location back to here, to go to this location, to go back to here. So because if it was one long narrative, it's very difficult to weave all that together.
Yeah.
And it also allows you to replay missions later. So to create a place for you to select those missions to go back and get those other collectibles. So it's a great implementation of a hub world that I was initially incredibly hesitant on.
Yeah, I must admit I completely agree with you there. I was at first when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, was pretty hesitant, but yeah, it's essentially used as like you said, an interactive menu. It's quite genius the way, because obviously the story wouldn't flow properly if you went from level to level. It makes sense to go back to this ship, to this Fortress of Doom before heading back out.
Because as you mentioned before, there's a bunch of collectibles in this game.
So many.
So being able to go back to other levels, so once you finish or even throughout, you go back and start chipping out there and start collecting them all. To add to my point from before about telegraphing, I had no issue finding collectibles. There's almost like one or two that I couldn't quite get to, but 99% of the time I'm like, all right, is it there? All right, I'm just going to go over there. There it is. Yeah. Let's get into the story next. Now, my approach to even Doom 2016 with its story about harnessing hell energy as like a new power source, even then the story was kind of like secondary for me. It's all about the gameplay. That's why we talked about it first, because gameplay is king with id Software's and Doom. Coming into this, I had a rough idea of what the story was going to be about. I presume it's just more reasons to like keep the Doomslayer moving forward. I've watched minimal trailers because I wanted to go in as clean as possible. However, with the story being a little bit disjointed in some ways, or the narrative isn't quite fleshed out, there were moments I'm like, what am I doing? What are they telling me? Did you feel that way?
Well, see, because I haven't played Doom 2016,
very little came through.
I came in, I'm like, okay, they gave you kind of a quick lowdown, and I'm like, oh, this is what I've got to do. This is kind of why I'm doing it. This totally makes sense. And I bought in and then started killing stuff. So, obviously I'm quite close to being finished with it.
I finished it.
So I haven't quite got the whole story yet, but it seems compelling enough. It seems logical for the gameplay that I'm doing.
Yeah, from where you told me that you are pretty close to the end, and a lot of it does get sort of nicely wrapped in the end. A bit more context of it all. Yeah, it is very, compared to the first one, which was focused around you stopping the demons from harnessing hell energy, where here it's actually it's kind of more introspective. It's focusing a bit more on the Doomslayer and who he is and that sort of, which I obviously don't want to go into spoilers, but that was the interesting dynamic. And it wasn't until I finished the game that I went, oh, that's what they're trying to do. The longest time I'm like, I don't get why you're showing me this. Who's that? Okay, cool. There's only like a couple of things from 2016 that really passed on through. But yeah, it wasn't until it all sort of came together, almost like a Doctor Who season. It's like, what the hell is all this disjointed? Oh,
yeah. I mean, like I said, it gives you enough to get you going. So it'll be nice to see it all wrapped up.
Because on top of that, like even the big final boss, the big villain, they kind of didn't really land. Like in terms of like their motivations were sound. I enjoyed it. And I understood. However, it's just even then it's just like, okay, cool. You're the big bad. When can I shoot at you? Where like the messaging behind their motivations kind of made sense, and it kind of opens up to another one a little bit, but every game opens up to another game at this point. That's not very few definitive games these days. But yeah, so once I had the realization it's more introspective, it actually makes me rethink the game in terms of the narrative that they were telling. Now, one thing we have to talk about with Doom is obviously sound design, because it's a big, massive part of this game, especially with big bussin' guns blowing the shit out of stuff, and then of course the soundtrack. But what do you think of the sound?
So I primarily played this on headset. And I think that's definitely the best way to play it. It's so good. Being able to hear everything around you all at once can sometimes be in the thick of it can get overwhelming. Like, because everything has its own unique sound, and then you've got the blaring of, hey, someone's about to get ya type thing, and then each of your weapons all have their own unique sound, but it kind of tells you, it ramps itself up as it gets to those big set piece moments, and I think that really pays off. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, the guns have such a good like thump. Yeah, they've got a weight to them. Yeah, like when you're firing the super shotgun as an example, it's just you feel the kick. I play with it mostly through my TV, my speakers, but a bit of headphone work as well, and it's just. Because for me, the headphone, I was like, I need to hear the soundtrack, because I have such a soft spot for the Doom soundtrack. But so the explosions, everything about it was cool. Creatures have cool noises. So like when you're entering and you're moving around so fast, having that sort of surrounded audio is incredibly important, because as you're focusing on one guy, on one particular creature, you hear the like, oh shit, all right, cool, I know you're behind me. Or you hear like the sound of someone coming in, and then followed by a growl. You're like, oh shit, that guy just entered the fight. Like, all right, this is gonna get gnarly. We hear a shung of a sword or a shot of a gun. And you're like, fuck, this is where it gets gnarly. Yeah. But let's talk the soundtrack. I have gone on record numerous times talking about how much I love the Doom 2016 soundtrack. I think it is almost one of the most perfect soundtracks ever to be released for a game, mostly because I'm a huge like industrial metal fan. So it made me so happy to listen to that and to hear a lot of the touches here. There were some minor differences. There were times where it didn't feel as heavy. However, then you sort of moved into the bigger fights, and you got that big swell and all that like chugging guitar. And one of the big additions was advertised was the Metal Singer Choir. Which I love. That song, you'd hear it kind of just in the background, this ominous noise, and they're sort of just yelling and screaming, made up language that we don't quite know, but it's just ominous, and it's always there. It's in the background. You sort of hear it come through, and knowing some of the singers that are on there, because as I mentioned, being a big industrial fan, I'm a big fan of Ministry and like Static X, and then to have Tony Campos, who's the bass player and one of the singers for Static X, in there, and he's the bass player for Ministry, I was like, I'm having like a little metal freak out. So to hear it all again is brilliant. Now, as of launch, the soundtrack is not available. Mick Gordon and Bethesda announced it on their socials. It is coming, and the game does have a full soundtrack. It's just it's not being compiled into a CD or a Spotify or a vinyl, because I want that vinyl so bad. Because is it your scene? Is it your music? I don't mind it. For this game, it works perfectly. It adds to the atmosphere of all the settings. It gets you pumped up in those big fight set pieces. It just works. It would feel odd for it to be anything else. I think so. Having that heavy metal getting you pumped up, and in turn it's just
it's this, as you mentioned, it's the swell that really lands you, like, because you're hearing this sort of like, you know, not, I wouldn't say it's like it's all tuned down. I mean, like it's the volume's a bit down. It's like
because it'll kick in as to the lead up.
Yeah.
So you're walking down a corridor, for example, and you'll hear the music, and you're like, okay, something's about to happen. And then when the door opens, everything comes in, and then
and then it just goes that big like swell. It's like and you're like, oh no, here it is. So then you're in, and it's crazy. And it's just guitars and drums and I love the soundtrack so much.
No, it's been really good.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic.
And they have brought some tunes across as well, which I love even more because it is a nostalgia.
Yeah.
Like when you start hearing like I want to say it's not Rip and Tear. I'm not sure which one was it. I don't know. It's on Michigan. It's one awesome fucking soundtrack for me. So it's this moment of like you're in the location, you start hearing, you're like, it's what made me fall in love with you, and it's brilliant.
Yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant.
It definitely adds to the.
So before we drop our final thoughts, is there anything else that you want to mention about this, Max?
No, just it. Like I said earlier, this is not a game I would normally gravitate towards, but it definitely pulled me in. I will see it through because I'm wanting to get through it. It's got enough tug to pull me through. With between the tight gunplay, the great platforming, I've had very little technical issues. There's been a few. I
had one minor moment of slowdown, but other than that, it's held a 60 pretty.
I fell through a wall at one point. That was weird, but it shot me back out to where I was, so it was fine. I didn't die in checkpoint back. It kind of just went, "Hey, you're not supposed to be in here," and I kind of just zipped me back out on the other side. It was a weird like grapple point that I kind of grabbed onto, and it's like put me too far, and then it just rectified itself. So that wasn't too bad. But no, it's great. It's fantastic. This is an easy recommend for anyone. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that we won't be touching on in this review just because of time and because we haven't done it yet. So there is the battle mode, which I believe is a multiplayer-y sort of setup.
Yeah, it's a 2v1 system.
Yeah, that's right. So two people are demons, one person is the Slayer, and it's like an asymmetrical multiplayer mode. Haven't played it yet. I think post-release, probably get into it a little bit more. I think it might be more beneficial, especially with more hands in the game. We also received the deluxe edition, so it did come with a copy of Doom 64 that neither you or I have touched.
No,
as it stands right now. So it would be cool to talk about Doom 64, but we haven't played it yet. Keep an eye on for the players, the PopC PlayStation podcast. We'll touch upon it probably in the coming weeks. But similar to yourself, in terms of this game, even the negatives that I did highlight, it really doesn't take away from what a ripper, pun intended, game this is.
Yeah, I think they've definitely stepped it up from 2016. So if you enjoyed 2016, this is a no-brainer. Yeah,
unquestionably. So like in terms of new weapons, it's still just as tight. It performs just as well. It looks stunning. So as I mentioned with the big vistas, so when you go to these locations, they feel bigger than a hallway in a small battle arena. They are greater in scope, and the visual fidelity is noticeably better. So previously, like they were cool, but they were simple-ish. Because remember, this came out in 2016, so it's been 4 years. So obviously, these current generation consoles, they know how to use this hardware now. They know how to use this hardware better. And I guess just learning over time, because we played it on PS4, of course. So seeing the little nuances in extra details in the world around you really added a lot more to it. And then with the addition of the exploitable body parts, really added a nice visual finesse to sort of everything that you're doing. Like, ooh, that's really nice, because they are location based, so they're not just be like you shoot them in the leg and then their arm comes off. Like it is, I don't even know how you would plan for that. It's just like these are hit boxes, and then depending on how many hits they take is going to affect you this much. But it was just so cool, like walking up and just like shotgunning someone's leg out and and it falls apart, and it's so much fun. Yeah, so overall, the game is great. I understand, as I mentioned, with those complaints they made, there are things that people may not enjoy with it, but as an overall experience, it's not going to disappoint.
No.
Depends on once again, comes down to what you're wanting. So as I said, I found parts of it to be a more gamey experience, but I also kind of enjoyed those changes, because if I want to, I'll just go play Doom 2016 again. It's funny, I'm just going to correct myself a little bit there. So when I said sort of a gaming experience, one thing that the Doom 2016 had is every location you would go into, you would find a little nest thing, and you would pull the side of it out, and then you just get swarmed. So just constant waves over and over. Like every different location had that. So you do like 3 of them in one level. Where here, that's kind of eliminated. It is a lot more story driven. It's a lot about you moving forward, and just demons happen to be in a location rather than you triggering something to spawn them in. So like there is some complete creative direction changes in this, and I think it's for the better. I think when you do have things like battle mode and be able to go and replay those levels again, I think people will get the satisfaction they want of going into it, knowing what it's going to be and planning for it and working it out. Because that's, by removing it from the completely arena-based moment with interjected hallways, I think they've made the game heaps better. Yeah, it's a must recommend for me. Only if you're a big Doom shooter fan, then hell yeah. Like if you're someone that probably plays more Call of Duty and it's more about hiding, you're not going to get the same appeal. No. Because you need to keep moving forward, you need to keep running around, you need to hit people's faces, and I really enjoyed it personally. But I'm whether I'm biased or not, because I knew I was going to enjoy it going in. So I guess it's more of a testament for you saying.
Yeah, well, like I said, this definitely wasn't really on my radar, having not played 2016 or very little of 2016, because I really couldn't get into it. This one has really pulled me in. It's definitely an easy recommend for me.
Big time. Well, as we said, big thank you to Bethesda for providing us the code to play id Software's Doom Eternal. If you have any questions or anything, let us know in those comments below. I will be answering all of them to the very best of my abilities. Let us know whether you plan on picking this up, or some of the changes we mentioned may be hindering you, because, I don't think that should be the case. You should totally go check it out. But I'm Ryan Betson.
I'm Max Cooper.
And that was our Doom Eternal review.